Welcome everyone to this lecture on live deployment. Let's now deploy our application that's working locally to the web so anyone online can use it. Keep in mind there are dozens of different services to deploy and host web applications, and we could make an entire course out of just showing this process for every single service. But if you just do a Google search of Flask application plus deploy to your preferred platform like AWS or Google or Azure, there's going to be tutorials for pretty much any online service for deploying a Python web application. So keep that in mind. We're going to be using the free service from Heroku, mainly because it's free and you won't get charged for this. However, the one thing you will need to do is create a Heroku account, and we'll kind of walk through that later on in this lecture. However, please make sure to follow along with us carefully. Any minor typo will pretty much cause the entire app to fail, so please make sure to reference our files during the deployment process, and I'll be doing that myself as well. So the main steps we need to follow is to first create a Heroku account, and then we need to install some command line tools that we're going to be using in order to push things to our server. Then we'll install and set up Git, as well as create a Heroku application, and essentially push and install everything to that online Heroku application. Let's begin by setting up a brand new folder on our desktop that we will work from. And we're going to copy the official course files to this folder just to make sure that we don't make any typos along the way. So let me go to my desktop now. Okay, here I am at the desktop. What I'm going to do is just create a new folder. So however you create a new folder on your operating system, go ahead and do that. And I'll call this folder just deployment, all lowercase. Hit enter. And then inside of this folder, what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and open it up. All right, so now let's grab the necessary files from the course notes. So I will open up TensorFlow 2 Bootcamp, come down to deployment, and then what I'm going to do is grab the templates folder, as well as our provided final app.py file, and then the model and the pickle file. Go ahead and copy these, and then bring them back over underneath the deployment folder. So then we'll go ahead and hit paste here. And one last thing we need to do is, because of the way we're going to later on set up our process file, I need to change this application to just be app.py. So go ahead and rename this to just be app.py. Later on, we're going to be using a library called Green Unicorn in order to set up a process file. And within that process file, I just say app:\app. And because I say the name of my app is app, I need this to match up with app.py. So go ahead and make that change. And then what you're going to do is go ahead and search for Heroku, hit enter. You'll see sign up at heroku.com. Go ahead and click on this, and we're going to do a couple of things here. We're going to sign up for free. So go ahead and click sign up for free, and then fill out the information to sign up. I already have an account here, so I'm going to log in instead. And once you log in, you should be taken to your dashboard. It looks something like this. And if it doesn't, you can go to dashboard.heroku.com/apps. So this is the dashboard, but before we start using it, we want to get the Heroku command line interface. So open up a new browser to Google, and then just search for Heroku command line. And then it should take you to this page right here on the command line, specifically Heroku's CLI. So here's the command line, and there's this little button somewhere on this page that says install the Heroku CLI. You can also just Google search install Heroku CLI and it'll take you to this link. Go ahead and click on that. And then depending on your operating system, you can either use the macOS installer, the Ubuntu installer, or the Windows installer. I'm going to do the Windows installer. In order to actually use the Heroku command line tool, you also need Git. So if you check out Git here, you can follow the instructions on installing Git, as well as a first-time Git setup. I already have Git installed on my computer, so I don't need to follow these instructions. I'll skip forward to installing the Heroku command line interface. So click on the 64-bit installer, and then go ahead and download that. Once you've downloaded that Heroku setup, just go ahead and install with the default options selected. Go ahead and install it. I'm going to fast forward until this is done installing. All right, so that finished installing for me. What we need to do next is open up our command prompt. Keep in mind, since this is a command line interface tool, and so is Git, you should really restart your computer before continuing on. So I would recommend that you restart your computer before continuing on to the next step. I technically already had all these things installed, so I don't need to restart my computer. So what I will do is directly come back here and open up an instance of my command prompt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd, or change directory, into my desktop, and then cd into that deployment folder that I was in. Next, I want to create a new environment just for this Flask application. So the way we can do this with Anaconda is really similar to the way that we created it for our original TensorFlow environment. One thing to note here is at the time that I'm filming this, TensorFlow does not yet support the latest version of Python, which is Python 3.8. So we'll need to specify a specific version of Python in our create command. So I will say conda create -- name, and then let's call this my deploy env for my deployment environment, and then say Python is equal to 3.7. Go ahead and hit enter, and then what that should do is download and install Python 3.7 for you. Go ahead and select Y for yes so that it can download and install all this for you. Once that's done, you should see something that looks like this that basically says activate the environment. I will say conda activate my deploy env, and now my environment has been activated. Let me type CLS to clear this so we can go back to the top. There we go. So now my deployment is has an environment ready to go. I need to install the libraries that I'm going to be using. So we'll say pip install, and we should be using pip for this, not conda, and you'll see why later on. We'll make a pip freeze requirements file off of this. So we'll say pip install, and we know we need Flask, so we'll install Flask. And then after Flask is done installing, we'll also need to pip install flask-wtf. So let that install. I'm going to clear my screen again. So a couple more libraries. Obviously, we need to install TensorFlow, but we also need to install scikit-learn. So go ahead and say scikit-learn, pip install scikit-learn. Recall, we use that for the scaling object. So it's going to download and install both SciPy, scikit-learn, and anything else it needs. I'm going to fast forward until that's done. All right, so that finished installing. What's nice about this, it also installs joblib and numpy for us, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. And then you just need to say pip install TensorFlow and hit enter. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward until that's done installing and collecting TensorFlow. Once that's done, go ahead and install one more library. I'm going to clear my screen here. And that library is called gunicorn, which stands for Green Unicorn, which is essentially a Python web server gateway interface. And it's what allows us to take our Flask application and push it to the Heroku server. So go ahead and then say pip install gunicorn. That one should be pretty fast and pretty straightforward. So our virtual environment now has all these pip installed libraries, and we want to make sure that we can get a requirements.txt file that we can then push to the server and pip install all the libraries onto the server. So what we do here is once we're done with all of this, we say pip freeze, and then we do kind of an arrow sign or a greater than sign, and then say requirements.txt, and it has to be called requirements.txt for Heroku. Then hit enter, and you should now see requirements.txt as a file. Let's go ahead and check that out on our computer. So here under deployment, now notice I have this requirements file. There's one more file that we need to create, and that is a process file. And that's also specially required by Heroku. So to do it, what I need to do is open up Sublime Text Editor. Let me go ahead and do that. So let me bring in Sublime Text Editor, opened already. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type out the following, and you need to type this exactly as I'm showing here. Web : space gunicorn space app : app. So that's all we need there. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to say file, and then we'll save this. And then underneath my deployment folder, I'm going to save this as capital P ROC FILE. So proc file or process file. And then we save that there. Okay. So that was the last thing we need to do in order to set everything up in order to push this all to Heroku. So let me close this now. We have our requirements file ready to set up. We have our model and our scalar, the app file, and then the templates as well. Now let's go back to Heroku and set up our application on the Heroku end of things before we come back to the command line. So I'm going to open up Heroku again, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Google search Heroku. Whoops. Yes, I did mean Heroku. There we go. And then we're going to create a new app. So click on Create New App, and then we need to choose a unique app name. So I will call this my-flower-app, and it'll tell me whether or not it's available. Looks like it is available, so let me hit then Create App. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be using the Heroku Git command line interface as our deployment method. And then we're just going to follow the instructions shown here. So what's really nice about this is you have the step-by-step instructions as shown here. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to do all these instructions at our command line. I'm going to bring up my command line again. Let me shrink it down so we can kind of see both at the same time. The first thing that we need to do is type out Heroku login. So say Heroku login, and if it says Heroku is not recognized, go ahead and make sure you restart your computer. But upon hitting Heroku login, you should be able to press any key to open up the browser. So open that up, and it should open up an automatic browser page that then allows you to log into Heroku. And then once you hit that login and sign in, it'll say logged in as, and then your email that you're using for the login. Okay, so once that's ready, next thing you're going to do is create a new Git repository. So make sure you've CD'd already, and then say git init, hit enter, and that will initialize an empty Git repository. And then what we'll do is type out the command as shown here, Heroku space git :remote -a my flower app, or whatever you happen to name your application. So this essentially syncs up that Git repository to remote on Heroku. Next, we want to deploy our application. So we say git add space just a dot or a period, hit enter. That adds in any new files that we created there. And then we're going to say git commit space -am, and then double quotes here, added files, or whatever message you want to say. Hit enter, and you should see it essentially create modes for all those files. And then the last thing we need to type in here, if you follow along with the instructions, is git push Heroku master. So we say git push Heroku master. And now we'll take all those files and push them up to the Heroku server. So give that some time depending on your internet speed. It may take a little bit of time to actually push everything to the Heroku server. Okay. And then there's instructions here. If you already have an existing Git repository, you can just run these commands. Okay, I'm going to fast forward until that's done. Now, something you may notice from time to time, depending on your application, is towards the very bottom, it may say something like push failed, push rejected something, etc., or remote rejected. And essentially what's happening is Heroku requires, for a Python application, the requirements.txt file. And what it tries to do is install all those libraries in your requirements.txt file. And if it's not able to do one of them, it'll just reject the push. And you'll notice that if I scroll up here, it said no matching distribution found for TensorFlow 2.0.0. But you'll notice it tried a bunch of things. So it said, hey, we tried 0.12.1, 1.0, etc. And towards the very end, you'll notice that there is alpha or beta versions that are available for whatever particular version of Python that Heroku is using. So what we need to do is open up our requirements.txt file and change 2.0.0 to 2.0.0a0. And you'll see this for any other type of library that you're trying to install in case you run into any issues. So let's open up Sublime. So we'll open up Sublime Text Editor, and then what I'm going to say is File, Open File. Going to open up Requirements File, and then essentially scroll down here until we find TensorFlow. And here's TensorFlow. What I'm going to do is let's go ahead and just delete TensorFlow Estimator as well as TensorBoard, because we know those will be installed automatically with TensorFlow. And here we have 2.0.0. It's not able to find that. So we'll come back to our actual command line that was telling us what version was available. It looks like 0.0A0 is available. So let's do that. Let's say 2.0 and then say A0. Save those changes. And then we're going to come back to our command prompt. All right, with those new changes, we want to commit them. So we say git commit -am and say updated requirements file, or whatever you want to say. Hit enter, and then it'll probably report back to you that it updated. I accidentally committed twice during the filming of this, so it says nothing to commit. After that, we'll say git push Heroku master, and we're going to try essentially pushing that command again, now with our fixed requirements file. So we'll see all this thing. It says app detected, pushing, installing. Notice it's installing Python 3.69, it's installing pip, etc. So we should now be able to find the particular version of TensorFlow that Heroku has access to. So let's go ahead and fast forward until this is done installing. All right, so at the very end, what you should be seeing is something like this: verifying, deploy, done. And if you ever want to update anything, you just need to do some more commitments, or more commits, excuse me, and then push those as well. So what's really cool here is notice it says https myflowerapp.herokuapp.com deployed to Heroku. Go ahead and copy that URL and take it to your browser. So let's open up our browser. All right, so now our application is running live on the web, which means anyone could access this from a laptop with web access. Let's go ahead and just input the values we did last time. Luckily, my browser remembered them. Hit analyze. And then here we go. The flower class is Setosa. Keep in mind, if you have an extremely large model, this won't fit within the free tier. But our model is pretty simple. Our scaling is pretty simple. And there it is. Your TensorFlow application is now live on the web. Congratulations, and I hope you enjoyed the process.